Okay, so this is being done a lot. I'll do the same. A lot of videos going on right now talking about what's going on between Thailand and Cambodia from inside Thailand, and I'm sure there's some coming from inside Cambodia as well. Um, I want to put this out there too. Um, Not sure how many people are going to give a shit. Honestly, I don't see really anyone, sharing these outside of Thailand and Cambodia, and to some extent that's totally understandable. When you have situations in the world like Gaza. At the same time, I am all for international solidarity, and so we need to know what's going on everywhere. Being inside Thailand, it's hard to be objective, but I'm going to try. And right now, there seems to be a big contest going on about which side can claim the victimhood. And the reality is both are. Both Thailand and Cambodia are victims here. Who shot first? Now, objectively, or at least I should say functionally, it's Cambodia, but this is nuanced. Okay. Um, Here's what happened, as near as I can put together, on uh, July 24th. Early in the morning, there were some skirmishes between soldiers, some gunfire exchange, each side saying the other shot first, or something like that. It's kind of he said, she said. But Cambodia did escalate by launching BM-21 rockets into Thailand. If you're wondering what kind of rocket that is, we are not talking about some little handheld law rocket. We're talking about the ones that you see where the launcher is big enough that it has to be built onto the back of the truck and it kind of tilts up at a 45-degree angle. Not always 45, it adjusts, angle for trajectory. But those were launched into Thailand, and while they are very powerful, they are not like laser guided or radar guided. So while they might not have specifically targeted where they hit, you would have to calculate for trajectory. So they were launched into civilian areas. One hit a hospital in Surin. One hit a village in Surin, taking the youngest victim in this, who was only 8. And you also had over in Sisaket district, although considerably further from the border. The ones in Surin are only about 5 miles over, but about 20 miles or so over the border in Sisaket, 7-Eleven was struck, killing about 8 people, the youngest of whom was 15. Thailand retaliated by putting some F-16s in the air and cluster bombing some Cambodian military bases, as well as sending some drone bombs to try and take out these BM-21 rocket launchers. So functionally, in terms of bringing out the heavy artillery, yeah, Cambodia shot first. Both sides want a ceasefire. Both sides seem to be hard to back off. But and there is a real kind of 9/11 vibe. No one expected this. I was worried about it. You can check to see that I have said before I was worried about this sort of escalation, um, and it happened. But what is and why I like being here, and seems pretty similar on the Cambodian side, is after 9/11, America wanted blood. Okay, they wanted vengeance, and despite the Thai people being full of hurt, being full of pain, and being full of anger over this. They're not so consumed with it that they're forgetting about peace, about seeing an end to this. One of my friends on Facebook, I don't know him in person, but I know him through someone who I do know in person. When he shared the logo that's going around by the Royal Thai Army, sharing to condemn the Cambodian attacks, and he put up the hashtag Cambodia opened fire, which is a popular one. He also put down there, pray for peace, justice, and reconciliation. And, I think that kind of says it all about the Thai mentality, that even after getting attacked, and yeah, they're fighting back, but when I was in America after 9/11, nobody used the word reconciliation. And to see that in such time, well, that's why I'm living in a good place. Now, some other things I want to point out that you're probably not hearing. What caused all this? And right now, yes, okay, these attacks ordered by Cambodia, because the Prime Minister is Hun Manet, who's the son of Hun Sen, who was Prime Minister for the better part of 30, actually more than 30 years. Up until a few years ago, he's kind of being painted by the Thais as the Osama bin Laden. And while I do condemn the acts that he obviously had a role in, he's kind of being portrayed as the one and only bad guy. I'm not sure I agree with that. Actually, I really don't. Not to say that I'm absolving Hun Sen. I mean, yeah, these launches into civilian territory are war crimes. I'm not arguing that. But this goes beyond Thailand and Cambodia. And here's what you're probably not going to hear. These sort of skirmishes have been going off and on for 80 years, but when they're not going on, Thailand's and Cambodians get along fine. No one wants to see this, and you see even in all these videos you see coming out, just kind of like I'm doing, from Thais, and even some foreigners here too. They're saying that, but ultimately from the Thais, they're saying, we want peace. We don't want this. Some of them are even saying, we know the Cambodian people are suffering too. You didn't hear that in America after 9/11 about about whoever America was going to go bomb. But these things have been going on. But this latest round, this happened on May the 28th, which was one day after the firefight that reopened this one was on May the 28th, and that was one day after the ASEAN summit. That's, for those of you in the States, ASEAN, Alliance of Southeast Asian Nations. It's kind of like a mini form of BRICS, where one nation chairs it every year rotatingly. ASEAN was meeting in Malaysia, who's chairing it this year, and they invited China and several Gulf Arab nations as guests, and the main discussion point was how they could all work together to deal with the insanity of dumps trade war. And so they do that on the 27th in Malaysia, and then on the 20th, this is when, yes, Thailand and Cambodia are both there, and then one day later, this happens. A firefight breaks out in the disputed area. That goes a long time between differences in scale on maps drawn by Thailand and drawn by France when they were the colonizers of Cambodia. And so in the disputed area, there was a firefight, and it's a very odd one because both sides swear up and down that the other side shot first, and no one's cracked since. And there was one Cambodian soldier killed and no other injuries that we know of. So we cannot dismiss the possibility of a third-party sniper from someone who'd want to kick this off, to reopen this wound and create this again. And so, yes, the U.S. is very much a potential player here. After all, like I said, what better way than to stop countries from banding together against your economic warfare than to get two of those nations fighting each other. Unfortunately, it's kind of worked pretty well. Now, the other incident that had casualties, or well, not deaths, but injuries, serious, crippling ones, was in the few days before this. So I think the exact dates, I'll have to look them up, were the 21st and the 23rd. But some Thai soldiers were wounded from PMN2 landmines. And analysis of the landmine post-explosion indicates that they were newly made. PM2 is a Russian model, and there's all kinds of black market stuff all around the world for Russian parts. Anyone could have got them. Now, of course, landmines being landmines, while everybody's saying Cambodia put them there, and well, it's the likely candidate, but what you have to keep in mind here is that if Cambodia pulled this off, they probably had help. Okay, because obviously if you have to successfully sneak into the other person's territory, and this was not disputed area territory. This was well into what is acknowledged as Thai territory. At a time when there is border tension and there were random patrols going around on both sides, to successfully sneak in and plant landmines is a very risky move. You're very unlikely to get away with that without satellite imagery, tracking troop movements from the other side. There's only 4 countries that would have that capability. One is China. China don't want this shit. If you know anything about China, this is not how they roll. They like their change very slow and steady. The other 3 are Germany, Italy, and the U.S. Again, I've already mentioned the potential U.S. interests here. Germany's also had a pretty nasty right-wing turd, and maybe they could have. Italy, given their stance on things like Gaza right now, and not full alignment, but telling Germany to back off on that one, Italy does not seem to be the player here. So that leaves the U.S. The other potential player in all this, who would have motive to kick this off, that also nobody's talking about, is France. Okay. Back in 2009, a company now known as Total Energies, I know they changed their name from something else when they actually inked the deal, but they're a French mining company, and they inked a deal with Cambodia to oil rights in the disputed maritime territory between Thailand and Cambodia. And it was known that it was disputed territory. It is, however, through oddly enough, through the maritime disputed territory where you have access to, I think, via an island, but mainly it's under the sea, um, to the largest untapped oil field in Southeast Asia that they've mapped out so far. And so Total Energies, or what became Total Energies, inked this deal with Cambodia of having access, but part of the conditions for this was that Thailand had to sign off on it. So I put Thailand in the driver's seat. And if Thailand wanted to work with Cambodia, or Cambodia wanted to work with Thailand and mind it themselves and give France the finger, they could have. And while that's kind of backtracking on a deal, given the history of France and other colonizers backtracking on deals, I'd call it just karma if they chose to work together and fuck France over. But that didn't happen. Now this is a good segue into the internal politics. You probably, if you're paying attention to this, you heard something about a phone call between Paetongtarn Shinawatra and Hun Sen, where basically she kind of sucked up to him, trying to calm him down, but sucked up to him, called him uncle and that sort of thing, and even tried to blame the Thai military for these issues. That did not go over well with the Thai public at all. And really, both sides, you have a lot of people trying to say that this was leaked internally. Some say Hun Sen leaked it. Now, he did admit to sharing it with his inner circle. And that's understandable, strategy-wise. But he did not cop to leaking it to the public. Now, what you have to understand is that Hun Sen and Thaksin, because Hun Sen is as I mentioned, he's the father of the current prime minister, who used to be the prime minister for about 30 years. And so even though he's not the prime minister, he's kind of acting like it, as like the senior official, the power behind the throne. And he was called up by Prime Minister Paetongtarn Shinawatra, who is the daughter of former Prime Minister Thaksin Shinawatra. And, basically, Thaksin was and still largely is, a U.S. puppet. The day before he was thrown out for corruption by the military. You'll hear in the press that he was at the United Nations when the military launched the coup, and that's true. What they usually don't tell you is that the day before that he was also in New York and meeting with the Council on Foreign Relations, which, if you don't know what that is, that's basically Wall Street's main think tank that's existed for over 100 years, and their primary goal is to figure out how to exploit the global south. So he not only met with them, which might have been the straw that broke the camel's back for the Thai military ousting him via coup, but he was exiled because it happened. He was overseas, he was exiled, stayed in exile, mostly in Dubai, but he would very regularly fly back to New York and give lectures at the Council on Foreign Relations. He also kept in contact with Hun Sen and occasionally went to Cambodia. So there was tightness between the Hun and the Shinawatra families. And if Hun Sen wanted to somehow trick Thailand into green-lighting Total Energies through France, extracting that oil without Thailand getting a cut, it would be very, very unlikely to happen at all. But if there was one politician or political family in Thailand you'd want in the prime ministership to be able to pull that off, it would be a Chinawat. And so you wouldn't burn your only possible um, way of going about that if what you were trying to do is cash in on the oil money by working with the French firm Total Energies. So, as everyone well knows, if you got, compromising information on someone, you don't throw it out immediately. You use it as leverage. Um, Now, the Thai military, if you listen to the Western press, they'll often be called the conservatives. That's not really true. You have Pheu Thai and People's Party, who are labeled by the Western press progressives, but they're not. They're neoliberals, and basically, um, what they call progress is really nothing more than westernization. Now the military, and military supporting parties such as United Thai Nation and Bum Chai Thai, these folks, um, they actually do I mean, they're capitalists too, so I'll put them on the right overall. But they do have more of a socialist tendency in certain operations. For example, Prayut Chan-o-cha, who was the military leader who launched a coup against the other Chinawat Yingluck in 2014, but then won election again in 2019, so he was in power for 9 years. One of the things that needs to be known about him is that he was the bulwark against Western companies who were trying to buy up Thailand's water supply. Thailand's water supply is municipal. It is state-run. Whereas, although they were kind of not touting it, the Shinawat family and their Pheu Thai party, or it's called something different then, they keep changing their names, but they were very open to foreign companies coming in on all kinds of different stuff. It was Prayut Chan-o-cha who was the main one who established a government agency in Thailand to keep Thailand's water municipal and state-run. So he was protecting Thailand and Thailand's water against foreign takeover and privatization. That's something that's very rarely told. Basically, so you have, a lot of the Western press. I knew very quickly, I knew something was up when I first came here several years ago, where I saw the Western press greatly taking a dump on Prayut and propping up the Shinawat family, as well as what's called the People's Party. They're like the controlled opposition of the neoliberal group. So it was obvious, like, okay, there's always a reason when the Western press sides with one faction and disses another. It's they're siding with the one who's kowtowing, is what you can bet on, and it's turned out to be the case. Now, recently, the Western press has turned against Thaksin Shinawat, letting his crimes be exposed to the rest of the world, if you pay attention to that. Mainly because he made a few comments, nothing huge, but what might be called quasi-China friendly. And ever since that, there have been a lot of attempts to put the other neoliberal Western style faction as the main one. Basically a changing of the guard of puppets, so to speak. So that's what's going on there. But again, either of them, uh, I don't think either the Thai military nor Hun Sen and his inner circle leaked that phone call that became the big scandal, because neither one of them has motive to do it. Most of them will be much better served using it as leverage. So then who did? Probably someone with a lot of tech to intercept that call. Some other things that should be noted, even though it's the US and France that are the main culprits or potential culprits in wanting to stoke this, we all know that they cooperate with other Western nations and their intelligence agencies all work together. So we can't leave out the role of MI6 as well as Mossad. And the reason why this needs to be brought to light, I can't say how I know this. This is one thing, believe me or don't. But last weekend, so 3 or 4 days before July 24th, there was at a certain location in Thailand a low-key meetup of MI5 and MI6 officials here. Like I said, I'm not going to reveal how I know that, but I know that. Also, up in the northern town in northern Thailand known as Pai, there's a huge, I was considerably away from the Cambodian border, granted, but there's been a huge influx of that being a hotspot for Israeli tourists, to the point that the locals are getting really pissed because they're going and they're wanting to set up their own little town, and that which is actually, and they're even running businesses that it's illegal for foreigners to do in Thailand, trying to they're trying to set up their own little colony, and the Thai aren't liking it too much. So definitely in some of this, because like I said, the whole incursion of landmine, putting landmines across the border at a time it's being watched. You need some intel. Okay. Now Israel does not have that kind of satellite capability. I don't know. I don't think it's not. I could be wrong. But where you do have to look at where they play a role in this is the two nations with the greatest capacity for large scale social media war via paid troll farms are the US and Israel. And if you watch on social media, in a lot of the English language, at least the English language press, I'm not seeing it happen in the actual Thai articles. It's like people are not going there. But in the English language press that you see coming out of both Thailand and Cambodia, you see just all kinds of allegedly Cambodian trolling. And I say allegedly because even though there are obviously going to be Thai and Cambodians and foreigners in both countries, looking on these pages and commenting, they are overwhelmed with people claiming to be Cambodian, basically just constantly pointing the finger at Thailand, to the point that it's hard to believe that they'd have the capacity for this much. Now, yes, now you might have heard that Cambodia is known for their scam centers, and that's true, but I want to flesh this out a little bit. Cambodia used to be kind of a hotspot for casinos, and when I say casinos, though, I'm not talking about Vegas or Macau. These would be, your basic underground casino that, it might be super plush inside, but kind of looks like just an ordinary warehouse or something from the outside. Where a bunch of very rich high rollers kind of go in secret, sort of thing. If you YouTube various Cambodian and Southeast Asian travel videos, you'll find videos for Angkor Wat and Phnom Penh. You won't find any YouTube videos in a Cambodian casino. So it can be very misleading when you call it that. Now, when COVID hit, obviously, with the borders closed, it was harder for these casinos to stay in business, so a lot of them turned into like these scam call center boiler rooms. But they were more about scams that kind of targeted people financially. The main target, a lot of these were run by Chinese mafias. And I say Chinese, no, I'm not, just to be clear, because people love to drop that term. No, they were not connected to the CPC. They were just ethnically Chinese. Some of them were PRC citizens, some of them were not. You got a lot of Malaysian Chinese, Singaporean Chinese also in on these operations. And so that's so they mainly target making like scam calls, trying to get people to invest in this or that into mainland China. They'd target wherever. But so these became, they did become a cash cow, but not anywhere near as big as what would be the cash cow of the oil field in the disputed border. The Cambodian government only was bringing in about 62 million in tax revenue from these places. So, that's a lot, but even for a small country like Cambodia, as a part of the national budget, that's pretty small. But you will hear that folks are saying that one of the main reasons why Hun Sen turned on Patongtan and Thaksin Shinawat is because the Chinawats were, and Patongtan was, and the Putai Party were trying to push through a bill to open casinos in Thailand. Now that hasn't come through; it's been killed. Just about anybody else in Thailand was against this, but to say that it was Hun Sen protecting his business is kind of BS, because this bill was for basically a big entertainment center style casino, a la Vegas and Macau or Monaco, etc. It was not one of these, underground selective high roller type places. So again, looking at that, this is a motivation for Hun Sen turning on the Chinawat family is very unlikely. So again, we're dealing with, okay, who benefits from this war? It is a war now. You have people, you have evacuees on both sides. I think I said earlier, but go over it, but on about 15 miles on the Thai side, I think similar things happen on the Cambodian side, that everybody's been evacuated. Provinces are under martial law. I'm not sure if it's just martial law in the demilitarized zone or the whole province, but yeah, they've evacuated everybody just in case. So yeah, this is not good, and fortunately, the best thing I can say is that the Thai people don't want this. The Cambodian people don't want this. It's only in Thailand, courage is not seen as just jumping into a fight. Courage is seen as restraint until you absolutely have to fight, and then fighting. So when you have no other choice. So the ideas of patriotism Um, patriotism here isn't chest pounding, but you will have some folks online who try to portray it that way. So yeah, there is, yes, there is a big attempt here that does feel kind of post 9/11 in the U.S. invoking national pride, but it's not with anywhere near as much hate and vitriol as was the case in America post 9/11. And that's why I like being here, even though I'm really sad to see what's going on. But that's it. I know I talked for a while, but there's a lot going on. This is not a simple situation, but it's something that is engulfing two nations that shouldn't be engulfed by it.